Good evening, everyone. Now, as some of you will know, some of you won't know, depending whether you stay to the end of my last video, I am in LA. I'm out here with work. I've been here for 5 days now, 4 days now, something like that, and I'm here for 5 weeks, which sounds great. It's gonna be a lot of work, but I can't complain because I sound like a knob if I complain about a trip to LA. But the thing I can complain about is the fact that I can't ride my bike. I know, proper first world problems. However, what I can do is rent bikes. If you have watched a few of my recent videos, I mentioned that I was looking at a company called Twisted Road, where essentially you can rent people's bikes off them. So if you have a bike that you very rarely use, you put your bike on Twisted Road and you can rent it out for $80 a day or $300 a day or whatever you want. Great idea. I would not let other people ride my bike, but that's me. I've got one coming this weekend and I've got one coming in a few weeks' time, which is going to be a big trip, which is where this comes in. Now, this is my old Shoei RYD. If you've been a long-term viewer of the channel, you will recognize it. But what I need to do with this is set it up so I can put you guys on the front. I don't know whether you guys can see that, but I already have a chin mount. This is done by way of using a GoPro sticky pad. I've never had this fall off in the entire time I used it, including coming over here, but there is a couple of issues with that. First of all, you can't access the slider to open and close the vent. Not the end of the world, I left it open most of the time anyway, but it's just nice to be able to access the vent. Second of all, I took it on a flight over here and a few other bits, and it just seems a little bit too sketchy for my liking. It looks like the age of the sticky back material is kind of wearing off. So what I'm gonna do in this video, long intro I know, sorry. So what I'm gonna do in this video is I'm gonna refit that mount to the front and I'm gonna fit a microphone in the helmet. I'm going to do this in the exact same way that I've used on my Arai Tour X4, and quite frankly I think it's one of the best ways to have a motovlogging setup, or even if you are just wanting to film some of your videos with half decent audio. You are currently a GoPro Hero 9 with a media mod case on. I think it's probably one of the best ways of doing this. It's so easy. You don't have to sync up audio or anything like that. So for 99% of us who just want to film some nice footage and get a bit of us talking or basic motovlogging, it is more than ample for what we want to use it for. So first thing I'm going to do is get that off of the helmet. Cool. Right, so that is done. This is an anchor point or a secondary anchor point that I fitted previously, so if the GoPro ever came off the front, there's a second point which you can see is strong enough that will hold the camera until I can pull over. So getting into this, what are you going to need? First of all, the way we're going to mount it to the helmet, we obviously need an empty GoPro mount thing. If you haven't got a spare one of those, you can get them on eBay or Amazon for not a lot of money at all. The one thing I would recommend is not buying cheap. These are less of a importance, like these bits here. The actual GoPro mounts themselves, if they're cheap, they snap. I'd rather spend 15 quid on a couple of these from GoPro themselves than watch my camera go bouncing off down the road. The second part, and the way that we're actually going to mount this to the helmet, is this stuff. This is Sugru. It is a moldable putty kind of glue. I watched Andy Mancam do a video of this exact thing. I have used this on my Arai Tour X4. I've used it on a couple of other things. Essentially, you take it out of the packaging, you mold it, and you let it go off overnight. And once it's done, it's not going anywhere. It's fantastic stuff. The only thing I'd be wary of is I don't know how easy it is to remove. If you're sticking this to a helmet anyway, I'd probably advise not doing it to a brand new helmet. So let's get that on and then I'll show you the microphone. Right, you're slightly lower so you can hopefully see this. I can have this mounted sideways or I can have it mounted vertical. It doesn't really matter which way it goes. The only thing I'd say is most GoPro mounts are vertical, so that's the way I'm going to go. So let's get this out. Sugru comes in these small little packages. You can get multiple different colors, black, white, gray, I think they do blues and reds and all sorts. I obviously went for black because it's more stealthy. In this pack, which I think was about sort of £8 to £10 on Amazon, I've got 8 sachets of this stuff. You probably need about 2 to 3 to fit to any particular helmet. Now, you've got to think when you're riding along, your helmet isn't bolt upright. It's normally at least like that, and obviously if you're on a sports bike, it's going to be more like that. So you need to cater for that in the mount. Now this stuff is quite messy, so be careful. And then the idea is once it's on there, you then trim it up. I've got a pen knife here that I'm just going to trim up the edges so it's nice and tidy, and then we should be good. And that is roughly what it looks like. Literally just a piece of moldable putty. I'm going to go for 3 just so I've got a bit more wiggle room, and then you can always cut off any excess. And also it's so cheap that it doesn't really matter, does it? So all I'm going to do is going to roll it out into a long phallic shape, but it's slightly thicker in the middle than it is at the end. I'm going to put the thick bit down the bottom here, and then put the thinner bit up the top, and then it's just a case of molding and messing around with this until you're happy. Now you don't have unlimited time with this, but it's malleable for quite some time, which is really useful. Right, and then we just squeeze that in. I look down from the top to make sure it looks vertical. I look from the side to make sure it looks at least straight. Once you're happy with it, then you get the knife just to use it as like a flat edge to push against. Just to give you a rough idea of how it looks, this line up the middle is bang in line with the helmet. From the side you have quite some leverage, I guess is what you'd call it. From here it is very flat as well, and also I can still access the vent. Obviously granted I'm probably going to have to do that without gloves on, but at least I can still access it, which is great. Inside the actual mount itself, this Sugru pushes through that, so you can see there is this stuff here is all excess. So get a knife in there as well just to tidy those up. Right, we're back. So this isn't incredibly spot on just yet. What I'm going to do is wait for the Sugru to dry, and once it's dry I can then tidy it up even more, but you'll get a rough idea of what it's going to look like. You should be able to see sort of here. I know this camera's not incredible for focusing, but you can see that I've got a nice sort of sculpted base all the way around, and you can see what I mean. It just needs a little bit of tidying up. It's a little bit square in areas. I obviously need to tidy up these wires, but it's straight that way, it's straight that way, and it's straight that way. As I'm still trying to access this vent here, I've obviously had to make it a little bit more pronounced at the bottom, but I don't really mind it like that. When I put the helmet down, that mount is obviously going to hit before the base of the helmet is. Obviously that's not the end of the world, but I just something to bear in mind. I'm going to leave that for about half an hour to an hour just so it's sort of a bit drier and a bit more set. Then I'm going to fit the microphone. I might be in a different t-shirt if I decide to do this tomorrow. Ta-da! There's my Hero 9 in the media mod on the helmet. There's the mount. It's all dried now. That isn't going anywhere. You can hold it from there as well. I left that overnight just to sort of harden. One thing I did do before I let that fully set is I roughly test fitted this. Just put it on very, very gently to make sure it didn't move and to see if I was happy with the angle it was sitting at. So the GoPro itself is mounted on one of these mounts. This one's got more of a, I suppose, loop, which means you can put the camera further out and tilt it back a bit. So the next thing is microphone, clearly. As I mentioned before, I've got the media mod on this. All that is, I'll show you what it is. External housing, you can get that for the Hero 10, 9 and 8, which you can essentially slide the GoPro into, close that up, and it gives you access to a few different microphones. You've got a front microphone, a rear microphone, and you also get 3 ports on the back. You get a USB Mini, USB-C, and a headphone jack. Now for microphones, you can use basically anything. Microphones are definitely something that you get what you pay for. If you buy a £5 microphone off Amazon, it's gonna be crap. If you buy a £150 microphone, it's probably gonna be pretty good. I know Richie Vida spent a lot of money on his microphone when he was having issues. For me, I use these. It's a Purple Panda lavalier mic. I think full price of this is about £30–35. You can get them regularly for about £15 to £20 plus posting. What you get in the box, you get a clamp, an extension lead, you get a lead to connect it to the USB Mini, you get the microphone itself, you get a converter which takes it from a 3-ring cable to a 2-ring, which I'll explain more about in a minute, and you get a few dead cats. If I show you that, it probably isn't going to focus, but as you can see, there are 3 black rings on that. I think that means that's a TTS or a TRRS. This camera and the media mod needs a 2-ring connector, not a 3. So if you plug this in being a 3-ring, you won't hear any audio. So what you need is a converter, which is what this thing is. This isn't that good. It works, but you get a bit of crackling and it's not that great. Personally, I use this. This is a Rode version of that exact thing. Rode are known obviously very well for their audio quality, so that is definitely something that sort of swayed me into buying this one instead. This was about £6 or £7. Your microphone plugs into that, and then that plugs into the back of the camera. Simples. That mounts to the front of the helmet, as we've already discussed. Then I'm going to route this into the helmet. The only thing I will suggest doing is mounting your camera, plugging it in, working out a way to wrap this around the mount or something like that. Now the reason I say that is this moves about a little bit. It doesn't click in very well. So there are times when I did my first super adventure video, for example, that had gone from there to there just because I'd accidentally nudged it and all of my audio was gone. Really irritating. So I'm going to get this routed into the helmet, literally just behind the foam. So it doesn't particularly matter which way you do it, but this will come out of the right side of the camera. So you can route it from the right, round the back of the helmet, and then up so the microphone sits on the left side of your mouth. Someone's going to comment saying that your helmet's not going to protect your head if you've got one wire that goes under the padding, but the dead cat, there's various different names for these, but I call them dead cats. And the idea behind those is they just stop the wind noise. So I'm going to get that routed and I'll show you the result in a minute. There we go, really quick. Let me bring you over and I'll see if I can show you what I've done. So here we go, you can see the cable comes out, it wraps around the GoPro, and then it comes underneath this. So you've got a nice secure cable, but it also gives it a bit of slack. That then runs underneath the padding. You won't even be able to see it because it's all underneath the padding, all the way around there, and then it comes out there. Ignore this pad on the back here, that's just from an old microphone from my old Senna. That is nice and out of the way, I won't be able to feel it at all, and it doesn't get in my way when I put the helmet on or take it off. Now the other thing I would recommend if you have one is a chin skirt, and you can see here that I've actually made a cutout on the plastic of the chin skirt to allow the wire to go through. So essentially that goes over that like that. Not only do they keep your chin nice and warm, but it stops the buffeting of the wind coming up and going onto the microphone, which makes your audio even worse. The reason I look a little bit tired and the reason it sounds really late and there's crickets and all sorts of stuff is because I'm taking a bike out tomorrow. I am well excited for it, and I will see you in that video next week.